This is big news. Looks like China is starting to crack under pressure.
China is running out of options.
You're going to have, in the next couple of weeks, 10 million workers who've lost their jobs, who don't get severance pay. Some of them haven't been paid for months.
The masses are fed up. They are marching in the streets, especially the students.
Their economy is weak as rainwater. Their economy right now looks like somebody chewed them up and spit them out and stepped on them. Their unemployment is way up, particularly among young people. Their property market has imploded. Their debt is sky high.
China's manufacturing empire is collapsing like a house of cards. Factories are shutting down, workers are taking to the streets, and the CCP is desperately trying to keep control as their economic miracle unravels before their eyes. For decades, China built its entire economy on one simple foundation: manufacture everything for the world at unbeatable prices. This strategy transformed China from an agricultural backwater into the world's factory floor. In 1990, China accounted for just 3% of global manufacturing output. But by 2023, that number had exploded to nearly 30%, making it the undisputed manufacturing superpower. But what happens when the world suddenly stops buying? That's exactly the crisis China is facing today. The new wave of global tariffs has hit China like an economic tsunami. The United States has imposed tariffs of up to 200% on certain Chinese goods. The European Union followed with tariffs up to 45% on industries from electric vehicles to steel. Even emerging markets like Brazil, India, and Vietnam, once reliable customers, have erected their own tariff walls to protect domestic industries. For China's export-dependent economy, this is nothing short of catastrophic. Now, let's look at what's happening on the ground across China's industrial heartland. In Guangdong province, once the crown jewel of China's manufacturing miracle, entire industrial parks are going dark. Factory owners who once employed thousands are disappearing overnight, sometimes literally leaving workers without months of back pay. At Shenzhen Electronics Manufacturing Center, over 50,000 workers have been laid off in the past 3 months alone. One former factory supervisor told our sources, "We were making components for American electronics companies for 15 years. Then suddenly, the orders stopped coming. Within 2 months, our entire factory shut down. 5,000 people lost their jobs in a single day." The economic pain is spreading like wildfire. In Zhejiang province, textile factories that once clothed the world are now empty shells. Machinery sits idle, collecting dust instead of churning out exports. Local business owners report that nearly 40% of manufacturing facilities in the region have either closed completely or are operating at less than half capacity. This isn't just hitting factory owners, it's devastating millions of ordinary Chinese workers. In Dongguan, known as the world's factory, workers are taking to the streets in unprecedented numbers. Last month, over 10,000 factory employees blocked major highways after being laid off without compensation. The protests quickly turned violent when authorities tried to disperse the crowds. These are not isolated incidents. Similar demonstrations have erupted in Chenzhou, Chongqing, and dozens of smaller industrial cities across the country. The CCP is deploying massive security forces to contain the unrest, but it's like trying to plug holes in a dam that's already breaking. What makes this crisis different from previous economic challenges is the scale and the CCP's limited options to respond. During the 2008 global financial crisis, China unleashed a massive stimulus package worth over $500 billion, about 12% of its GDP at the time. This flood of money kept factories running and workers employed while global demand recovered. But this time, the playbook doesn't work. For one thing, China's debt has exploded since 2008. Local governments are drowning in debt that now exceeds 80% of GDP. The property sector, which absorbed much of the previous stimulus funding, is itself in crisis, with major developers defaulting on billions in loans. The country's total debt has reached a staggering 300% of GDP, leaving little room for another massive stimulus without risking financial collapse. Even more concerning for Beijing, this isn't just a temporary downturn. These tariffs represent a fundamental shift in how the world does business with China. Countries that once welcomed Chinese exports are now actively working to reduce their dependence on Chinese manufacturing. The CCP knows this, which is why they're panicking. In a desperate bid to control the narrative, Chinese authorities have ramped up censorship to unprecedented levels. Social media posts about factory closures or protests are deleted within minutes. State media pretends nothing is wrong, running stories about economic transformation and high-quality development, while factories are actually literally shutting down by the thousands. But the truth can't be contained. Chinese citizens are finding creative ways to share information about the economic collapse there. Some use code words and metaphors to describe factory closures. Others share innocuous-looking photos that actually document protests. The censorship machine is working overtime, but it's fighting a losing battle. What's especially striking is how the crisis is affecting different parts of Chinese society. It's not just factory workers who are suffering. The middle class, those who benefited most from China's economic rise, are watching their dreams evaporate. Take Chang Wei, a 42-year-old engineer at a manufacturing firm in Zhejiang. For years, he embodied the Chinese dream, a good job, an apartment in the city, and plans to send his son to university in the United States. Now, his company has cut his salary by 40%. He can't make payments on his apartment, and his carefully laid plans are crumbling. He told our sources, "We were told our whole lives that economic growth would continue forever. Now everyone is afraid. No one knows where the bottom is." This fear is driving another phenomenon: capital flight. Wealthy Chinese who see the writing on the wall are desperately trying to get their money out of the country. Despite strict capital controls limiting citizens to transferring just $50,000 per year outside China, billions are actually flowing out through creative channels. Some use cryptocurrency to bypass banking restrictions. Others make investments in foreign real estate through shell companies. The richest simply leave, taking their wealth and expertise with them. Applications for investor visas to countries like Portugal, Greece, and Canada have surged by over 300% in the past 6 months. The Chinese Communist Party is well aware of this threat to their control. That's why they've implemented what analysts call the golden handcuffs policy, making it increasingly difficult for citizens to leave the country. Passport renewals now require extensive documentation and justification. Border officials have broad authority to prevent departures for vague national security concerns. Last month, authorities in Shanghai prevented over 200 business executives from boarding international flights, citing economic crimes investigations that seemingly materialized overnight. The message is clear: the party will decide who stays and who goes. But these desperate measures only highlight the regime's fundamental weakness. A government truly confident in its economic model wouldn't need to trap its citizens inside. let's talk about what makes this crisis different from previous economic challenges China has faced. You see, in the past, economic slowdowns were cyclical, painful, but temporary. This time, structural factors suggest the decline could be permanent. First, there's demography. China's working-age population peaked in 2014 and is now shrinking by millions each year. Decades of the one-child policy have created a demographic time bomb that can't be defused. Fewer workers means higher labor costs, undermining the low-cost manufacturing model that drove China's rise. Second, there's debt. China's economic growth in recent years has been fueled by borrowing on an unprecedented scale. Total debt has quadrupled since 2008, reaching over, get this, $40 trillion. Much of this money went into unproductive assets such as ghost cities, unnecessary infrastructure, and zombie companies kept alive only through continuous loans. Third, there's technology. The manufacturing processes that China dominated are increasingly being automated or relocated to countries with even lower labor costs. China's attempt to move up the value chain into high-tech manufacturing has been hampered by Western restrictions on technology transfer and growing concerns about intellectual property theft. All these factors were already creating headwinds for the Chinese economy. The tariff walls now being erected around the world are simply accelerating a decline that was already underway. The CCP understands the existential threat this poses to their rule. Their legitimacy rests on an unspoken bargain with the Chinese people: accept political repression in exchange for economic prosperity. Now, if that prosperity disappears, what happens to the bargain? That's why we're seeing increasingly desperate measures from Beijing. State-owned banks are being ordered to prop up failing companies regardless of their actual visibility. Local officials are manipulating economic statistics to hide the extent of unemployment. Police are being deployed in massive numbers to prevent protests from spreading. But these are band-aids on a gaping wound. The fundamental model that drove China's rise, export-led growth based on low-cost manufacturing, is broken, and nothing in the CCP's current playbook can fix it. For ordinary Chinese citizens caught in this economic maelstrom, the future looks increasingly uncertain. Millions of migrant workers who came to coastal factory zones are returning to their rural hometowns only to find few opportunities there as well. Urban professionals who thought their skills would guarantee lifetime employment are discovering that their jobs can also disappear overnight. The human toll is absolutely staggering. In Wenzhou, once a thriving center of light manufacturing, local hospitals report a 60% increase in patients seeking treatment for anxiety and depression. Suicide rates in industrial areas have spiked. Domestic violence reports have doubled in regions hit hardest by factory closures. These painful realities stand in stark contrast to the image projected by state media, which continues to trumpet China's economic resilience and new era of high-quality development. The disconnect between official narratives and lived experience is fueling a crisis of trust that may prove even more dangerous to the regime than the economic downturn itself. People who once believed in the system are now questioning everything they've been told. When state television claims the economy is growing at 5%, but you see factories closing all around you, what else might the government be lying about? This crisis of faith extends beyond economics. It's leading many Chinese citizens to question the entire political system. In private conversations, behind closed doors, in encrypted chats, in whispered discussions, People are asking whether one-party rule is compatible with true economic prosperity in the modern world. These questions represent the greatest threat to CCP rule since the Tiananmen Square protests of 1989, and the leadership knows it. Which brings us to a critical question. How will the CCP respond as this crisis deepens? History suggests several possibilities, none of them particularly reassuring. One option is intensified repression. The security apparatus could be unleashed to crush dissent with even greater brutality than we're currently seeing. The surveillance state, already the most comprehensive in human history, could be ramped up further to identify and neutralize potential troublemakers before they can organize. Another path is nationalist distraction. When facing domestic troubles, authoritarian regimes often look for external enemies to blame. Heightened tensions with Taiwan, territorial disputes in the South China Sea, or even limited military conflicts could serve to rally the population around the Chinese flag and divert attention from the economic failures that are all around them. A third possibility, arguably the most hopeful but least likely, is genuine reform. The CCP could recognize that its current economic model has reached its limits, and they need to implement true market reforms to reduce state control and to grant citizens greater freedom. But this would require the party to relinquish significant power, something it has shown little willingness to do. The most probable outcome is some combination of all three approaches, with the exact mix determined by how severe the economic crisis becomes and how widespread the resulting unrest grows. For the rest of the world, China's economic unraveling presents both opportunities and dangers. On one hand, manufacturing capacity is already shifting to countries like Vietnam, India, Mexico, and even returning to the United States. Supply chains are being reconfigured, creating new economic winners and losers. On the other hand, an unstable China poses serious risks to global security. A CCP fighting for survival might take desperate measures to maintain control, including aggressive actions abroad that could trigger wider conflicts. The coming months will be absolutely critical in determining which path China takes. As factories continue to close and protests spread, the pressure on the CCP will intensify. Their response will shape not only China's future, but potentially the geopolitical landscape for decades to come. What's clear is that the old China, the unstoppable economic juggernaut that would inevitably dominate the 21st century, is already gone. What replaces it remains to be seen. Hey, if you found this analysis valuable, please hit that subscribe button and please share this video with anyone concerned about China's future and its global implications. Thank you for watching.